Townhouses in Calgary. Are we going to see price increases or price decreases in 2025? Well, let's dive into that. Townhouses in today's market is worth $454,000, up $7,200 from last month and still up $9,500 from last year. Now, year over year percentage is still 2.1, and that has not changed from last month. So what does that mean? My name is Adam Fyfe, your Calgary Realtor. If you're looking at figuring out what's going on with the other property types here in Calgary, go ahead and scan the QR code. It'll take you to my website. If you want some additional information about what's going on with your home evaluation, you want to book a Zoom call, you want to read the PDF files, or you want to book a consultation, go ahead, click the links. They're all free to use. You do not need to put any contact information in anywhere. I just want to provide you with enough value so that when you are looking at the market, you're getting the most from it. Now, this is the write-up from the Calgary Real Estate Board. If you want to read it on your own, that's fine. Pause the video, skip to the next chapter. It's all good. March reported a surge in new listings with 697 units. The growth in new listings was met with 400 sales, causing the sales to new listing ratio to ease and inventories to rise from the lower levels reported last year. There were 826 units in inventory in March, pushing above long-term trends but remain shy of some of the highs reported in prior to the pandemic. Supply levels improved across all property ranges, with much of the gains occurring in the northeast, north, and southeast districts. Like other property types, improving inventories relative to sales has shifted the market towards more balanced conditions, especially for row homes priced above $500,000. This has also slowed the upward pressure on home prices. In March, the unadjusted benchmark price was $454,000, 2% higher than last March, but nearly 4%. 4% higher than last March. See, this is why I skip the end. I usually skip the end. If you watch my other videos, I usually skip past the end, and this is exactly why. There's some mistakes here. So let's just go on. Okay, so this is the benchmark price for a townhouse in Calgary. Like always mentioned, benchmark attributes are here. You go up here and you actually go and see what these benchmark attributes across the city. As you can see, the attributes in the east and southeast are no basement and no garage. So there's different attributes across the entire city. For the city of Calgary, these are the attributes here, which actually align with this price here. Now, this is a graph that indicates the price points, the inventory, as well as the sales. You can see that the red bar has had a steady decline of price going right into the winter lulls, and now we're starting to bounce back out of those winter lulls. You can see we're on a slight trajectory right now, and it'll be interesting to see if this continues to go upwards, because look at the amount of inventory that we have compared to sales. If you look at March and April, May of last year, our sales actually outpaced our inventory, which is a clear sign of price increases. But then it slowly, or I would say rather quickly, started to slow down, and then going into the winter months. And now we have a lot of inventory coming to the market. So we're going to touch on that in future slides. Here is a breakdown of the actual market of Calgary. This is the sales volume. So if we look at the year-to-date stuff, we don't look at the month-to-month because I touch on that in other slides, but year-to-date over here, you can see that the sales are down about 12%. The actual volume of property sales is down around 10%. New listings is up 25%. Inventory has over doubled, 125%. Months of supply from our crazy lows of last year at 0.8. The average so far is still a seller's market, but it is at 2 months of supply for the month, a year-to-date average, sorry. The sales to new listing ratio is at 58%, which is down from the 80%. We had over year-to-date average was over 100% sales to list price. Now we're below 99. If you actually go to the market here and we start to dive down into this, which I usually do with clients, this is just organized by the close date. So these are just the most recent sales. You can actually see that there is basically everything minus this guy here in Mackenzie Town, this guy here, this one here. Everything else is either at or under list price. So it is important to make sure that you know this information going on the market. You can see that all of these actually sold relatively quick, right? They were priced correctly or maybe under market value, and they got over market value. As an example, 468 still sold for 485 within 14 days, right? Still relatively quick in some areas depending on the price point. You can see the days on market year-to-date average is 31 days, but for the month it was 27. And then we're not going to touch on this right now because we're going to touch on that in future slides. So let's start to break down this market. This is the sales. This is the year-to-date sales for townhouses in Calgary. You can see that we're still in that realm. I guess you can even pull in 2021 of activity that we've seen over the last 5 years. 2022 was an outlier. We see that in every single property type. Prices were about $150,000 less. and there was just a lot of activity. That was what Alberta was calling that a very successful campaign that brought in a lot of people from Ontario and British Columbia. It was a very, very wild time. But now we're slowing down, but we're still seeing the same amount of sales activity. Look at where we were from 2015 to 2020 and look at where we are now. So these are definitely going to be our new normals per se, unless we see a big correction, which a lot of you love to comment saying that we need a correction. It's going to happen. I just don't see it yet. Okay. I don't see it yet. Now, when we look at the year-to-date sales broken down into price point, the red bar is the this year. You can see the yellow, the green, and the blue. Again, looking at 2022, just look at the sales from under $300,000 to $400,000. There was a lot of sales. There are very few sales now under $300,000 in Calgary. And you can see that the 700 and over a million, or sorry, over 800 is actually seeing an increase, small increase, but an increase nonetheless, where the $400,000 price range is seeing the most amount of activity year to date. For those of you who are curious, this is broken down into $50,000 increments. You can just see some numbers here. Go ahead and pause if you want, but you can see this is kind of cool. There has been quite a few over 1 million sales this year compared to last year. Cool. Now, when we start to break it down by property type and quadrant, you can see that the most active quadrant is the southern quadrant of Calgary, followed by the north quadrant of Calgary. And then, you've got city center, northeast and southeast, all, and even west, all relatively similar for the month of March at 50 sales. So if you're looking in those communities, especially this one, you might have a little bit more activity compared to other communities, but they're all relatively the same. So let's start to look at this as a listing side of things. So those are the sales. Let's look at the inventory and the listings. You can see that the listings are continuing to increase. Again, that 2022 outlier, a lot of sales, a lot of listings. Now we're starting to see more sales with a slowdown, or sorry, more listings with a slowdown of sales. Yet we're still seeing a slight price increase because there's still demand in this market. Now this chart here is the same chart as what we saw before. This one here, just in numerical value. And what it really does is it breaks down a couple of things nicely for us. You can see the new listings here in a numerical value. Now, if you actually look back, the last time we saw anything remotely close was May of last year, 690 sales. Yet prices were increasing at that point. Now, if we just compare May and March, you can see that we had 541 sales versus 400. We had 690 new listings, only 420 homes left over at the end of the month, where now we're double that at 826. So there is a lot of townhouses left over at the end of the month. It's the most that we've seen in a very long time, which is welcoming news. There's a lot of choices for you buyers out there. Again, we've shown you with some of those townhouses that are priced correctly, potentially, or under market value, they still move quick. But if you have patience and you're looking and you're taking your time, you should have a lot of room to negotiate and actually look at the market and make sure that you can find something that fits you the best. Now, days on market is starting to decline like it does every single year, 39, 31, 27. We are still elevated, right? We're not near those hots that we were last year. We're kind of near that September, October range when things are really starting to slow down for the season going into the winter. Now we're going into spring. When we look at the months of supply, this is where we're starting to start breaking it down into a little bit more of the inventory. I should have actually started with this one first. So next month I'll do this one first and then that one. But you can see that the inventory has has increased rapidly, right? We are back to 2021 levels. Total inventory for Calgary, total all property types in Calgary is back up to 2020. We were in ultra hot seller markets from 2023 to 2024. Now we're still in a seller's market, but we're definitely going towards a balanced market. No, it is not a buyer's market. No, it is not a full-blown seller's market, but we are going there pretty quick. Now, if you look at this here, this is the months of supply. So maybe I'm going to do this a little differently rather than whiting this out because it kind of hurts the lines a little bit. But you can see this outlier here of northeast as well as southeast. So if we go over here, we can see that the northeast is between 3 to 3.5 months of supply. That is a balanced market. We shouldn't see a lot of price movement there. But because we have been from an ultra seller's market going into that balanced market, I would imagine we're probably going to see some price decreases more in this area because of the rapid increases that we did see in 2023, 2024. Northeast had one of the craziest spikes from a lot of these communities because it was affordable. Now we're seeing a lot of inventory left over there. Same story with Southeast. There was a lot of development in Southeast, a lot of development down in the Mahogany area, Rangeview, all of this stuff. Now we're starting to see more inventory come to the market. It is definitely considered more of a balanced market, but still seller's territory. All of these ones here, the rest of the communities, in my opinion, are still a seller's market. Like when you start to look at south, west, and east especially, right, you're at 1.5 months of supply. Still a seller's market in those quadrants. So when you see the news, you see articles, and you see things are slowing down, yeah, of course they are. But are they slowing down everywhere? Not necessarily. These outliers definitely bring up that average, right, quite a bit. The black bar is the average for the city. You can see the average is at 2 months, but these two are bringing that up. Where these ones are all trying to pull it down. So just make sure to break it down. This is again where we talk about going over the quadrants, right? Going into the districts. Let's just do south as an example. If we go here, Calgary South, right? Dropping it from 13 all the way down to 192, going to the results here and really just looking at what is happening in the south. Look, I even see one here that had 10% over list price, right? They listed it for 300 in Acadia, they got 330. Still a very affordable unit, right? If we look as a 1970, 3 and 2 finished basement. Let's see if they probably had a parking stall. That's correct, no garage, but only $360 for condo fees, right? Still a relatively affordable unit in Calgary. So is it different everywhere? No, but that Acadia property is in south, right? So let's remember that it's a seller's market there. Now let's continue on. Going here, very obvious, right? The trend for the months of supply is on the up, right? We were through a pretty hot seller's market here. We went through a pretty crazy time where everything was flying off the market, and now we're starting to see a slowdown. You can see an accumulation of 2+ months of inventory, months of supply on a consistent basis, which is going to drive that up. I would imagine we're probably going to see this continue to creep up, probably flatline, just because there's still demand in Calgary, but there's going to be a lot of offloading of these properties come mid 2025 going into 2026 when all of these renewals are coming up and these crazy things with tariffs and the economy. Now, if you want to know what your townhouse is valued at in today's market, go ahead and scan this QR code. It'll take you to the instant home evaluation tool, which is here. Go and put in your townhouse address if you want. Me and my team will reach out. We'll say hi. If you want to have a conversation with us, fantastic. If you're looking to refinance, you're looking to pull some equity, you're looking to sell, you're just curious, whatever. That's fine. We're here to help. Go ahead, scan the QR code. It's pretty unique, and we're very happy to offer this service. So when looking at this here, this is the breakdown of all the quadrants in the city. Again, breaking it down. Sales, new listings, sales to new listings ratio, okay? You can see that city center is still above 70%. You can see west is still above, south is still above 70%, still indicating a seller's market, as indicated by the months of supply here, right? You can see there's a bunch of ones here still. But when you start to look at the northeast, 50 sales, 122 listings for the month, under or at 40%, which is above 3 months of supply, which is indicating a balanced market. But again, going from the crazy highs that we saw, I would imagine this is going to be the first quadrant that's going to see some major price decreases. So when we look over here, and we look at the percentages, right? Here's the benchmark price, again, talking about those attributes, going over to the link in the description, going to the attributes, going to townhouses and looking at all of the individual ones here, putting them into practice as an example. Let's just look at city center and northeast, 610 versus 371. But when we go into city center, right, we're looking at a 2003, where northeast, you're looking at a 1990. So again, just making sure we're putting that into actual context to make sure that you understand. So you can still see Northeast saw a 2.68% increase from last year. You can see the smallest increase actually was North. And then if we zoom out here, these are the actual numbers for the communities, for the quadrants. For the most part, everything's still increased. You can see East has a negative $200, which is nothing in this industry. But look at some of these numbers. West saw $11,000 increase. Southeast saw $11,000 increase. 7, 7, 8. There's still some movement in this market. There's still increases going on in this market, especially for these 1 month of supply. So when you're going in and you're wanting to understand this, break it down, okay? Break it down. Let's make sure we have a general understanding. Here is a pretty cool chart. This is the first negative that I have seen so far. This is the median price, right? So if we go back to here, nope. Let's go back to daily here. If we go to daily and we look at the median price, okay? March 2023, the median price, 380. Last year, 464. This year, 455. Okay, so we have seen a decline of 2% in median price. Okay, the middle price, the highest sale, the lowest sale, the middle, not the average, the middle. Right? You have your average price here. Right? It actually declined as well. The average price in March of last year was 480. Now we're at 471. Yet the attributes still increased. 444 to 454, that's a 2% increase. So the attributes of the property actually cost more. The average sale has dropped, right? So the average sale has dropped. Doesn't mean that the homes are cheaper. It just means there's more activity in the lower sales. So let's break that down, right? So we'll go back here, right? First one to see yet, okay? Will the benchmark price get down to a negative year-over-year growth? I just don't know quite yet. There is a very real possibility that we could see negative year-over-year growth. If we look at this chart here, right? We saw last year at 468. You know what? This chart would actually be best if we go here. So this is a benchmark price now, 454. Our highs of last year was only $10,000 more, okay? If the price increases by $1,000, we're gonna see a 0% year-over-year growth, right? And then it still has to increase by another $7,000 after that. And then if it increases by another $2,000 after that, we might not actually see year-over-year losses, right? Because it's gonna continue to increase. I don't think we're gonna see year-over-year losses. Comment all the things that you want. I will reply to you. We're gonna see a crash. Everything's gonna burn in Calgary. We're gonna see a 50% reduction. I've seen some crazy comments. I love it. I think it's hilarious. Comment your questions. Let's have a conversation. But are we going to see that? I just don't think so, especially not next month. I would be pretty surprised if we stayed at the same price, especially seeing even just in 1 month prior, we saw an $8,000 increase already from last month, right? So when we look at this, yes, the medians might stay down a little bit, but the benchmark attributes might not actually get into the negatives. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. So with that in mind, like I said, we're still kind of going on the up here. Now, you can see that townhouses have been on an absolute tear. 2021, we saw an increase in flatline. 2022, we saw a massive increase in a flatline. 2023, we saw a huge increase with a slowdown. 2024, increase with a correction, a small correction, not very much. And now we're going already back up. So where is the townhouse market going? I would imagine townhouses in Calgary are still affordable enough that people are going to purchase them. It's very interesting to see what's going to happen with this election, with these tariffs, with the economy. But Alberta in general is still positioned quite well to see growth. We still have lots of people moving here. No, we do not have a lot of international people moving here, but we still have a lot of people that moved to Calgary. I don't think people fully understand how many people moved here. I should actually make a chart about this, but so many people have moved here that can afford a property that have not yet purchased. They're renting for a year, they're renting for 2 years, they're making sure that they get their feet on the ground, and now they're ready to make that move. I think that there's still demand in this market. I do not think we're going to see the corrections that some people are saying. Slowdowns, absolutely. Corrections, probably not. So go ahead, prove me wrong, let me know what your thoughts are. Let's have a conversation. But we'll see you on the next one. Peace.